Just let me know when you're live. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the committee of the whole meeting for August 10th, 2020 to order at 12:31 p.m. And I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that the committee of the whole adopt the agenda for the August 10th Cal meeting as presented.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor via consensus? Carried. Adoption of minutes. Ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan that the committee of the whole adopt the committee of the whole minutes from June 8th, 2020 as presented.
I'll give you that motion.
All in favor via consensus? Carried. Land use bylaw monitoring program. I take it the lead you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good afternoon. As we have arrived at our 2-year land use bylaw monitoring program, administration is pleased to present the final report for the monitoring program today and for further discussion and considerations. In this report, there are 6 strategic indicators today, along with their specific targets, goals, were used to create what it has been compiled and presented here, which speak to achieving the collective vision of the town plan through the implementation of the land use bylaw program. The progress we are making is evident in the real change we see around the town when we see some of the finished products of some of the proposed and completed developments. Also, progress is evident through the rising number of inquiries from several stakeholders and developers and their interest in capitalizing on the opportunities the land use bylaw offers, which demonstrates that High River is moving into the right direction and speak to working towards achieving our shared community vision. You might have noticed that the report has highlighted one emerging issue which has not been addressed in this report, which relates to restrictions on parking within downtown that have been recently implemented through the traffic bylaw 4563/2019. These parking restrictions could pose potential issues if new development with residential units is proposed within downtown in the future, especially if a developer chooses to exclude on-site parking. Because this topic is outside the scope of the monitoring program, it has not been addressed here, but upon council direction and interest, administration could gather further information and analysis and regarding the implications of the new parking restrictions and could return to council with a report in the future for further discussions. As challenges may arise with the implementation of any new policies or set of regulations, the implementation of our land use bylaw comes with challenges, opportunities for improvements, and lessons learned. But overall, I am confident to report to council that the new land use bylaw has proven to be working well and with minimal effort and council support, it could be improved tremendously and can be more functional than ever. Christine will now walk you through some of the findings of the monitoring program in a presentation that will take around 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll allow you to ask any questions or make some comments. Christine.
Thank you, Khalid. I'm just going to share my screen here with the presentation, so I'll just be a minute. Nope. All right, here we go. There we go. All right. So good afternoon, Mayor and committee members. Today I will be reviewing the results of the Land Use Bylaw Monitoring Program that was implemented to evaluate Land Use Bylaw 4510-2017. So as Council is aware, the monitoring program was created to analyze and evaluate the implementation of the town's new land use bylaw that was adopted in April of 2017. This bylaw differs greatly from previous land use bylaws, and the differences can be found in the following approaches. The bylaw is now based on guiding principles. There's a reduction of land use districts and an increase in mixing of uses. There are no minimum parking requirements. We've added subdivision regulations. Additional dwelling units are now not only allowed, but encouraged on lots. There is a much greater focus on the design, character, and appearance of buildings. The town is taking a more collaborative approach to development. And lastly, the land use bylaw is interactive and web-based for greater accessibility and understanding. The monitoring program was designed to capture how well the new land use bylaw is working and was launched in October of 2017 and is now run for 2 years. So this program focuses on the key measures that Khalid was just explaining, and they've been separated into 6 main categories, as you can see on the screen. A brief review of the results of each of these categories, including the statistics collected as part of the 2-year program, will be included in this presentation. So the first metric was processing times. The purpose of reviewing this metric was to ensure processing times are consistent from one application to another, to support a strong relationship with applicants, and to meet the timelines that are set out in the Municipal Government Act. Each type of application was assigned a target metric, which was determined by the nature of the application. So as you can see in this chart, the new bylaw has not evidently affected processing times. Most data collected for each type of development permit application falls well within the processing timeline target of 40 days. So the solid blue line across the chart indicates that 40-day mark. The few applications that have exceeded this target were typically more complicated or included prior to release conditions that had to be met before the development permit could be issued, and therefore took more time to complete. And it should also be noted in this section that this indicator is not a comprehensive representation for single detached dwellings, since the town did not require a development permit for this type of building before implementing the new land use bylaw. Therefore, processing times for this type of application did increase, as the Municipal Government Act requires a 21-day posting period to allow for public appeal upon request and support for a variance to the land use bylaw. And many single detached dwellings do require variances, which I will discuss in more detail later in this presentation. So similarly, administration has had no difficulty issuing the transmittal of decision for subdivision applications prior to the 60-day mark set out in the Municipal Government Act. The 60-day mark is shown by the solid green line on this chart of the 2 applications of 16 total, where the transmittal of decision was not issued within 60 days, extensions were granted. Timelines were also measured for area redevelopment plans and area structure plans, but the only submissions were for amendments to existing documents. So there's not enough data to comment on this metric. Oh, it's cutting out.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. So the next key measure here was consistency of decisions. The land use bylaw was designed to provide flexibility to landowners so they're easily able to adapt their development plans to respond to market conditions, without the need for the additional process of rezoning. However, due to this flexibility, it was a possibility that the bylaw might not be applied consistently in varying situations. Therefore, this section was added to the monitoring program. So as you can see from this chart, the majority of applications, 54%, actually required variances in order to be processed as submitted by the applicants. The most commonly requested variances related to residential development. So the first was front garage projection, which is the distance between the front door and the front of the garage. 92 variances have been granted for this over the course of the monitoring program. The land use bylaw limits this projection to 1 meter. However, developers have conveyed that they're finding this requirement difficult to meet. The second most commonly requested variance has been driveway width at the curb. So 65 variances have been granted for this. The maximum front driveway width of 3 meters at the curb is also proving difficult for developers to meet for various reasons. And I've created this next chart here. We can see that when the two most prominent variance requests were removed from the data, applications that involved variance requests lowered to 26%, which is a significant difference. However, neither of these statistics show that the target metric is being met. For reference, the target was that no more than 5% of all applications should be granted variances. So it's important to note that the two most common variances seem to be requested because the previous land use bylaw did not require back lanes for residential subdivisions. So many lots that are currently being developed have no rear lane access, and they're not shaped to allow for smaller garage projections. The next metric was revisions to plans after submissions. So as you can see, revisions have not been an issue, and the target of 1 revision per application is being met. There's an average of 0.42 revisions per application. We can see that 69% of applications or submissions did not require revisions. And appeals have not been an issue either. There have only been 2 total over the entire course of the monitoring program. The next key measure is innovation, quality, and creativity. The land use bylaw was designed to provide applicants with flexibility to encourage sustainable, creative developments. It aims to diverge from the prescriptive regulations that are found in previous land use bylaws. So this section was added to the monitoring program to determine if developers are capitalizing on this flexibility and whether the new land use bylaw has influenced the innovation, quality, and creativity of development in High River. So the first metric relates to site design. So parking location requirements have been examined in this section. While parking is not required, if it is provided, the goal for parking locations set out in the monitoring program aims for 100% compliance with the land use bylaw specification of side or rear parking. There are situations where the development authority has allowed for front driveways if it's in line with other development in the area. So this target of 100% compliance is not being met. However, there is about 90% compliance right now. Next, landscaping requirements are largely being met. Only 12% of applications did not meet the landscaping requirements. The remainder either met or exceeded them. Of the few landscaping challenges that have arisen, many involved a utility right-of-way, limiting front yard landscaping options in residential neighborhoods. There are also difficulties with landscaping calculations in the land use bylaw for lots with a secondary frontage, as it usually requires a really large number of trees and shrubs. And due to this difficulty, the development authority has been granting variances in these cases. There have been very few issues with meeting the bylaw's building design requirements. The only notable issue is the requirement for the primary entrance of a unit to face the primary thoroughfare. This isn't always achievable when working with more than 2 units. However, transparency requirements have not been an issue and have been incorporated into various developments throughout town. Oops, sorry, I have my notes here, they're falling off. So we're going to go down to, this is just an example of a building with increased transparency, which is what the land use bylaw is aiming to accomplish. So an overall parking comparison was also added to this section. Now that there are no minimum parking requirements in the land use bylaw, administration wanted to see if different types of development proposals would come forward. So one example of improvement to the public realm that can be achieved through eliminating parking requirements or minimum parking requirements is batch bakery. So a proposal came forward for this lot that you see on the screen under the previous land use bylaw, and it just included parking in the front in order to meet those previous parking requirements. However, the proposal did not move forward at that time. Since then, another applicant came forward for the same lot after the new land use bylaw was implemented, and this is the end result. So this was a picture that I just took last week. So as you can see, this development has improved the public realm through creative landscaping and building design. Another category that was monitored through the program was customer service and understanding of the bylaw. The interactive online land use bylaw and map are designed to be user-friendly and allow anyone to find information. During the 2-year monitoring program, there have been no reported issues with the ability to access the online land use bylaw or GIS map. Questions or concerns about the land use bylaw itself have been addressed in a timely manner and added to the potential amendment section of the monitoring program for further consideration where applicable. And lastly, the revisions and processing times have gradually decreased over the course of the monitoring program. The infill development section of the monitoring program is intended to track areas of growth in High River to ensure sustainable development is not only occurring, but being encouraged under the current land use bylaw. The target set out for this section states that 25% of the town's overall growth should be occurring in existing neighborhoods. And the monitoring program data indicates that 39.6% of growth is occurring in existing neighborhoods, exceeding the target. This might be due to the high number of developable lots available in existing neighborhoods as a result of the 2013 flood, combined with the land use bylaw's flexible nature for infill development. The section also includes responses to the town's minimum development elevation to determine if the MDE requirements are impacting a development's ability to integrate into an existing neighborhood. The MDE has not created integration issues so far, as developers have been choosing to alter their building designs slightly by either raising their mechanical and electrical in the basement, or if necessary, designing the building to accommodate a utility room on the main floor. And the section, lastly, it also exists to determine if there are any capacity issues for infills with 2 or more dwelling units. Sorry, that's servicing capacity issues. The land use bylaw has been designed to allow owners to intensify the use on their lots, including creating additional dwelling units. And it's important to track these higher density developments to determine if there are any concerns from internal or external departments. At this point, 0 applications have raised servicing capacity concerns, which is meeting the target that less than 5% of applications should raise concerns. The land use bylaw has 2 main principles that all development is to consider, one being a pedestrian as a universal measure of design, and 2, stewardship through sustainable design. So in order to achieve this, the land use bylaw focuses on mixed use districts that allow for appropriate activities to be integrated into an area. The monitoring program measured how well the targets set out in the land use bylaw were being met. So the land use bylaw specifically states targets for mixed uses as a percentage in each district. In the central business district, the target was 70% mixed use and 30% residential. The monitoring program showed that 68% of approved developments were either mixed use or had the potential to incorporate multiple uses. However, no developments included residential uses at this point in time. The neighborhood center district is striving for 50% residential, 50% business and retail. There have only been 2 new developments in the neighborhood center district over the course of the monitoring program. One was a commercial development with the potential for mixed use, while the other, for which the development permit has yet to be issued, was residential, effectively meeting the program target. However, administration acknowledges that this data is insufficient and it can't accurately portray the development patterns in the neighborhood center district at this time. Whoops. There you go. The targets are most closely being met in the traditional neighborhood district, where 18% of development are mixed use. The goal was 20%, and the remainder were residential. So that concludes the key measures portion of the monitoring program. General comments were also obtained as part of the program and mainly focused on applicants having to go through the variance process in residential areas in new subdivisions that were approved prior to the current land use bylaw. So the last portion of the monitoring program was tracking the proposed amendments. So it has become evident that some sort of transitional framework would be helpful for existing undeveloped subdivisions so that developers don't have to apply for variances for every development when the land use bylaw standards are often unobtainable for them, just due to the size, nature of the lots and the fact that they don't have rear lane access. And I should clarify that this is for residential development. So this framework, it could look like a blanket variance for areas of Montrose and Hampton Hills that were subdivided prior to the implementation of Land Use Bylaw 4510/2017. That would allow for increased driveway widths and garage projections to be supported to a certain extent. And this would include a one-time 21-day posting period for these areas. Alternatively, staff could explore other avenues that would have the same end goal. Another oversight of the current land use bylaw was landscaping standards. The way it is currently worded in the bylaw, it could allow for landscaping to be overlooked if a site was covered by other structures, parking areas, or circulation routes. There are also a few minor adjustments that could be made to streamline the processes for both applicants and staff, and these are covered in Appendix J of the report. For example, some requirements are not possible to meet, such as the secondary frontage setback of 1 to 3 meters, considering that many rights-of-way throughout town are 3.5 meters wide. So developers aren't actually able to meet that standard. So that's something that would make it a little bit easier for both staff and applicants if it were to be amended. And we'll finish off here with lessons learned. So first, if a new bylaw is to be considered in the future, it would be beneficial to allow for more flexibility for land use bylaw clauses that are not working for developers without requiring applicants to go through any additional processes. More consideration would be needed for existing undeveloped subdivisions that may not be designed to allow for new land use bylaw standards to be met. Landscaping requirements should be reviewed in depth prior to implementation, including practice calculations for all types of lots. And it should be noted that development and subdivision applications now require more staff time due to the collaborative nature of development. So in the future, processes should be reviewed before implementation to ensure maximum efficiency. So this concludes the presentation for the monitoring program. Do committee members have any questions?
Thanks, Christine. Well done wheeling through all of that. And you did very, very well. Thank you. Let me get back to my proper view.
Or I'll exit out of the presentation.
Okay.
Oh, maybe.
I currently don't see, I don't have any hands up from council members, so I'll start. Yeah, I heard from a couple of, one was a realtor and one was one of the builders out in the Hamptons, you know, quite some time ago, and definitely both of them were concerned about the length of time that it took to get a DP. That was the big one. When you're in existing neighborhoods, right? That's where, you know, every time it was a 21-day posting period, and just when they're looking, and all these guys are building in other communities, and when in existing neighborhoods, it's just boom, you get your DP if you're all in line, right? It's pretty simple. Yeah. So yeah, some big frustrations there. So I love what you're doing in the proposed amendment on that. Kind of doing a blanket one-time posting for the whole area, and then it's done, right? Like excellent work there. And then, you know, the variances on the driveways and everything, you know, it's you know, you look at you know, existing neighborhoods, and you know, you kind of got to keep with what's been, you know, the past is the past, and it was, you know, to just cannonball and try to throw something different in halfway through is difficult. When we go into an area like the Spitzy that hasn't even been started yet, well, then there's going to be consistency through the development, right? But you guys have done a phenomenal job, and I'll tell you what, your pictures of Marcy's Batch Bakery over there, It's just wicked, right? It just shows you, get rid of this mandatory parking thing for commercial businesses, and that's what can happen. There's 2 places in town that are very good reflections of that. So, but that, anybody that hasn't been by that Batch Bakery on 8th Avenue, like, go by. It's an awesome build. It's very cool, and I think she's open now, if I'm not mistaken. But that was really it. You know, some of the guys, you know, the builders, you know, of course, they're always they like to keep things very simple. They like to keep it, you know, known things as to what they're doing. They can plug the same house into every single community, saves them money, and then they say that it saves the buyer money, but I'm not so convinced of that they're not just reaping the rewards of it. But so, you know, kind of going from the snout house, and, you know, we're trying to get rid of that and having the variances and everything else. I think you're working very, very well with it. And you know, myself, and I don't think others on this council, we're not looking to be another community and doing exactly what other communities do. We're High River, and this is the way we do things. And, you know, some of the builders, you know, they get frustrated. I've been told they're frustrated and left town. Okay. You know, really, if you're looking to do just status quo, boring stuff, there's other communities that are all over that. We have existing neighborhoods that that we can provide affordable housing and new housing and everything else. It's all there. We like higher standards. Sorry, the way we roll. Well done, Christine and Halid, your whole team, you're just phenomenal. I'll go to Carol.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Christine. I always enjoy your presentations, and you just do a wonderful job, and your whole team. I've received such wonderful feedback about the innovative land use bylaw, even from other councillors on different municipality councils. So good job. My one, I guess, comment or question is going back to Halid's comment about parking like downtown for residents. I was just wondering if we would include kind of a parking pass situation for people who live downtown so that they aren't hindered by the 3-hour parking rule.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I can add it to just a note in the program so that when we're looking at this at a later date, it's there, and whoever's working on that will be able to see that as an option.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Christina. I echo a great presentation, and I just really want to go a little further into what Mayor Snodgrass said, because I think when we developed this land use bylaw, we knew there was going to be some huge learnings, and that likely we would be back at the table asking for some changes, and here's where we are today. And I think you've done a great job of collecting the information. Maybe some of our targets were a little too ambitious out of the chute, and that's what we're realizing here. But I think it's just really encouraging going forward, you know, that we can work through these red flags. And I think it's important that at this 2-year mark, we're looking at that and seeing where we can improve on this even further. So just kudos to your team, and look forward to working through some of these issues and streamlining this even better.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Halid.
Thank you.
Request for land for outdoor pickleball courts. Who's speaking to that one? Caw-caw. Chris?
Mayor Snodgrass, I suppose I could chime in on this one. This is that letter of request that had been discussed amongst council via email about finding some land associated with for additional pickleball courts. Now that we have that, it's up to council whether we council direct staff to take a look and sit down with the pickleball group and work through some of their comments and their questions here and see if there is an opportunity to work through some pickleball courts at the location that they've specified. Or if there's alternate sites within the community that could also accommodate the proposed use as well. And I understand that they do want to be close to the Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex because of the washrooms and parking access. And those are all great attributes to consider from that perspective. So we're just looking for direction, whether we can continue going down this path and having a conversation with the pickleball group, or is there another site within the community that council would like to investigate and draw their attention to as well.
Okay, so I'll start opening this up. I should have probably just started it anyways. But I met with a group from the pickleball group. And they had a number of sites kind of in mind, but the only one that, you know, from my town experience, the only one that really worked was that one at the rec center. You know, the amenities that are close to it and the parking that's there, and you know, the indoor pickleball at the rec center and everything else, it all ties in so that, you know, maybe they could do some larger summer tournaments, et cetera, right? And it all just fits. And so when I sent that email out, you know, got feedback from staff that had concerns about that, which they always do, which is fine. But I think this is important. This is, you know, one of the comments out of the email coming back was, you know, well, what about lacrosse? What about this? What about that? Well, sorry, but they're not at the table. We have a group right now that's a growing group. It's a big group. Their outdoor courts are being shared with the tennis club out there, which they are different things, and there's challenges in doing that. And when we talked about this last year or 2 years ago, you know, we encouraged the pickleball to put a group together, and if you need your own courts, put a group together and get your own courts built, right? So here we are. They did it. They did what we asked them to do. So kudos to them. And this is much like the pump track in the Northwest, that you got a good group of High River citizens trying to do good things, and they just need a place to put this stuff. So, and in High River, there's challenges with a lot of what looks to be available land. There's always background to it. But the one at the rec center, I don't know, I quite like it. I think it fits. It's a rec facility. It's a rec area. The ball diamond, you know, there's been comments about being concerned about fly balls and everything else, but they're not at all concerned about that. And the way the ball diamond is shaped now, that it would be a rare thing, and it would be also kind of be a rare thing that both groups are going at the same time, I think, with the amount that I see that ball diamond being used, but that could change too. So I'll leave it at that. What I would like to see is, if, you know, my question back when staff come back with their answer before is, you know, okay, if you don't like that site, what site do you like? Give me the positives, give me the other side, right? What would work? So I'd kind of like to open that up for council's discussion as well, as to, you know, what you think of the existing proposed site at the rec center, and if not that, then where? And I'll go to Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I like a couple of things about this. One, that as you noted, we did challenge them to come back with some ideas, and they looked at it. To me, the Reclac site is a perfect site, and the other thing I liked about it was they're asking for the land. They're not asking us to develop anything else, or that was my reading of the letter, and I think that was really important. It's showing in independence. You know, we certainly, the town has provided the pump track land, the tennis court land, which is now shared, which as you said, just there are different groups. They're always going to have issues, and it's nobody's fault. And I'm not pointing any fingers. It's just they're different, and so I really like the fact that they have come to us with what I think is a good idea and a workable idea, and I'll throw in while I'm talking, I'll throw my 2 cents on the letter that we did get back. I think we're always, council is certainly has always talked about the importance of how are we going to make this work, as opposed to just saying no, that this really is a bad idea. This is, this site is just not going to work. I really like it when staff and admin come to us with ideas, and and even if they don't like the initial proposed site or whatever it is, they generally come back with us, with other ideas for us to come to a decision, because we take everything into consideration, as you know, and if we don't have all the information, it's really tough to do that. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Just so if there's anyone watching, can you describe exactly the piece of land, like where it actually is, please? You're on mute, Craig.
Thank you. It's the piece of land on the east side of the Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex, between the ball diamond and the parking lot.
That grassy part.
That grassy area there that's completely unused, other than baseball warm-ups or playing catch or something like that right now. So, you can always say, well, there's something being used there already, but there's actually not. And the thing is, we got a group that has a demand. It's a big group, and this is a demand sport in all communities right now. They're building these outdoor courts everywhere. So, and we have a very strong membership in High River, and I think it's great that this thing's moving. Councillor Kinghorn.
I wasn't actually, can I just finish?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So just to confirm, though, along the lines of what Bruce said, just to confirm that the only cost to the town is going to be the land. The town is not being expected to develop or pay for the development of the courts?
No, and I was clear with the group about that the best thing for both parties at the end of the day is that we offer you a piece of land and you raise the money to get it built. And then it's, you raise the money to get it built and maintain it and everything else, right? Then it gets a lot more, they have a lot more control in their little facility there, right? Where we see the problems come into play as well. And this happens on the tennis courts. Well, who owns it? Who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for that, right? We see that all the time. So, would this come back to the town at some point in time in the future? Maybe, I guess, if that was a council decision. But right now, I've been very clear that, our role is to provide you a piece of land, and your role is to do the fundraising to get it built for your group. So, I think that's important for it to be successful.
Right. And then I just have one final question. Considering that the courts are long overdue for resurfacing, would when the time for the courts to be resurfaced, would it go back to 5 tennis courts? I guess we'd have to make that decision, or would they still have an outdoor one there? Just a thought, because I've noticed increased membership this year for tennis as well. So, and just to speak to Councillor Masterman, it's been actually very positive out there. I've been out a lot, and you know what? Both groups are working very well together. So I think, you know what? It's been very positive.
So my opinion, Carol, is that if the pickleball gets their courts built, the other ones go back to tennis.
Okay.
When we have tennis out there, we got pickleball here.
Right.
I think
That would be very good, because like I said, it's an increased usership. So thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. To start with, I'm really in favor of doing something for the pickleball folks in town. I realize that it's a rapidly growing sport, and there's a lot of good people involved in it, and they're all trying to do good things for their sport. I do have a bit of an issue with using the lands over by the Recplex. It's a pretty small piece of land, and there really isn't much room for expansion, and it kind of takes away a little bit from the ball folks. So you asked about a couple of other places. I'm going to suggest 2 possibilities. One would be, we talked about the old Willow site, and right now that is just a mess over there, and we're constantly spending money cleaning it up, trying to make it good, and that's right on the entranceway into High River. I'm not sure what the requirements are by the government, but for that area to go back to natural is going to be a challenge, because it's built up and everybody knows what it's like there. I'm talking about right where the Willow condos used to be. The other one that might be for consideration is over at the Old Town Farm. There's a bunch of grass area over there that not much is happening with, just south of the hockey rink. So could administration look at those 2 pieces and see and come back with something? That would be my ask.
Okay, I get the Willows, the Town Farm grassland by the Town Farm. I don't know where exactly you mean, where there's a whole bunch of empty.
By the rink. If you go over there by the rink, there's a bunch of grass there to the south, I think it is. I have to get my geography back in place, but down in that area. And there's a nice big parking lot there that's available for them. And I just thought it would be an ideal spot, but we'd have to go look at it and get administration's opinion as well.
I'll say the first thing about that spot, Jamie, just in discussions with these folks, is putting pickleball right in the middle of residential areas, which is what that's going, like you'd be right in the backyard of some of those duplexes, condos along there. Like pickleball, it's weird to say, but it's a louder sport actually, right? It's a little harder ball, and it's a louder sport. And I know that one will be coming back, but and the Willows ones is always, what maybe could we do with that? And so yeah, this is exactly where we need to go. If not there, then where could we possibly fit these? Councillor Cooey. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I guess just in reference to Councillor Kinghorn's concern for taking away space from the ball, there is a big area for warm up in that for ball on the north side of on the north and the east side of that diamond. So it will take some space away. I think I was one of those that had concerns about the fly ball, but you're right. We don't see a lot of use of those courts or of the ball diamond. I think it's probably doable. It does have the amenities, like you said, the concession, all of that kind of stuff. I just want to clarify actually one of your comments, Mayor Snodgrass. You kind of indicated that they would operate the site, which would make it different than the pump track. And really, I guess now even the tennis courts now, do you see them operating, or do you see it once it's built being turned back to us and us operating it, or a hybrid?
Well,
or who knows?
yeah, personally, my ideal thing is that they operate it. I think it's just easier for everybody. What we're seeing is some groups are capable of doing that. Some, you know, some have a membership that can do that. You know, the pump track, there's just not going to be a membership group out there. It's just a community thing that's wide open, and, you know, other than maintenance, there's not a lot there. But ideally, I think these groups maintain and operate their little places. That's my thing, but it doesn't. It definitely doesn't have to be that. And if that doesn't work right for everybody, then it can be a hybrid approach, or it can be just the town owns it and the town pays for the maintenance and the town does everything, right?
Yeah.
I like the groups being responsible for their thing. It gets, we all know this. We've all been around in this thing long enough. It gets really messy and gets really difficult and frustrating for these groups when you have to go back to the town to ask for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a long time. Everything's budgeted. It's just difficult, right? And it can get really frustrating. So that's why I said, you know, if we can do it where you guys kind of have your own facility there.
Yeah.
I think that works best for all of us and the taxpayers and everybody else. And often, I'm sorry, the town, there's things the town does that we do very, very well. And there's things we don't. It's one of the first lessons I learned stepping into this role. Day 2, somebody said that. I said, you can't do everything. Like, there's things we do well and there's things we don't. And we don't do everything well. So we got to make sure we got some boundaries in there as to, and how this one will work. I don't know. I don't care. I'm open to pretty much anything that'll make it work properly. So.
Yeah, we're not in the weeds yet. I guess just a little, I mean, I think there's more pros to this site than cons for sure. Sorry, Nixon obviously has an opinion too. The only other site that if we had to look somewhere else, I wondered about George Lane Park, just because there's washroom facilities there. Because I think that's huge. If we're not providing washroom facilities near that means we're looking, or they are looking at the rental of porta potties or something. And do we really want those everywhere throughout our community?
Yeah, we talked about that one as well, Kathy. And again, you know, you're backing onto homes, and you are a little bit at the rec center, but those homes are kind of up on top of the, right? So you're a little bit isolated from that kind of stuff. But and George Lane, parking wise, would get tight if you had 10 courts in there going with some kind of tournament or something. And so all these things we can talk about. Back to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that site is more pros than cons. However, I was just thinking about the transfer of the land and whether it would be that we just give them the land and they own it, which would give them the ability to sell it for some other use in the future. And I was thinking that we should have a license of occupation or a long-term lease at like $1 a year or something like that.
Perfect. Back to Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I just wanted to kind of throw in my own little caution and about the Willows. Again, and Councillor Kinghorn, you and I may never really agree on that area, but I don't think it's a mess at all. People are making it a mess, but that's not the land's fault. It's what people are doing there. The whole thing with the Willows and Wallaceville was that there would be no permanent structures that could be damaged by a high water event. And anybody who, any court sport, obviously, the courts take a lot of money to spend and maintain, or cost and to maintain, and certainly would be susceptible to damage along with fencing or whatever else you might have out there. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out, that I certainly wouldn't be supporting anything like that in that area.
Okay, I don't have any other hands, so Chris, do you want me to bring some kind of motion, or Kara, do you want me to bring some kind of motion, or is it just, you know, direct you guys to meet with the pickleball group and kind of start?
Mayor Snodgrass, if we just get direction to meet with the pickleball group and talk about what their needs are, what space requirements that they'll need, what other amenities that they may take a look at, and we can start laying out what land requirements they're going to need and what that, and I agree with Councillor Moore that it needs to be a long-term lease of some kind, that there's no relinquishing of the ownership of that land.
Correct.
For the long term, that there is some kind of lease requirement, so we'll have to do that by survey. But we can start working on that and start seeing what their needs are and what other things that they'll require. So
Perfect. So we're good on that?
yeah, we're fine.
Thank you, sir. I can make sure you've got the contacts that I've got for that group, Chris. Okay.
They email me regularly, so I have.
Oh, okay. You're good. As long as you got Carrie Irwin on the docket, you're good to go. Next one, the rec center opening to user groups. I'll leave that one and I'll start that one with Chris.
Certainly, Mayor Snodgrass, I'll defer to our Director of Engineering and Operations, if Riley could chime in, and he's had recent conversations with AHS as of last week. And we have some kind of timeline when they will be vacating that site closer to the winter. So Riley, if you want to chime in and add what your conversations with AHS has been over the last couple days.
Sure, I can update on AHS. So we met with AHS last week. They were very supportive and willing to work with us in terms of opening the facility. And we think there's a couple different ways we could do some sort of partial opening of the facility and still accommodate AHS. AHS also indicated that because it is an outdoor testing facility, so the nurses have to walk outside to do the testing with the people in the cars, that they wouldn't go past freezing. So they were looking like end of November, early October would be likely the latest they would stay, given they are testing people outside. So it gives us a kind of a rough timeline in terms of maximum stay. We talked about possibly moving them 100% in the field house. We talked about kind of maybe alternating hours. So when we're open, they're not there, and when they're there, we're closed. Or perhaps using the rear entrances and allowing them to continue using the front entrances, or a combination of. But what they said, they were basically willing to work with us and willing to come up with some sort of solution and share the facility. So that was good to hear. Just to add to the user groups, we're hearing from a lot of user groups themselves, like minor hockey and whatnot. Minor hockey is probably the most vocal at this point in terms of getting access to the facility, but we're also hearing from individuals. We're seeing a fair amount of requests for our programming as well, like first aid, babysitting. Those ones are probably the bigger ones. And our outdoor Zumba has been rather successful. So we do get the inquiries, and there is a need for it. But on the flip side, AHS is providing a very valuable service to our community, and I'd hate to lose that as well. So I guess that's kind of where we're at right now.
So Riley, you know, looking at the way the facility is set up, starting with the curling club, because they're they would be the easiest one
Correct.
to deal with, because we can isolate them quite easily in their own space back there. So that one's, fairly doable, I'm sure. The next one would be minor hockey and the figure skating, I guess.
The small ice is super easy. We'd have, if we're letting curling access, we have to do the small ice anyway because they're on the same cooling system.
Okay.
The large arena starts to provide a little bit of challenges with trying to run the large arena while AHS is there at the same time, because those doors, the egress out of the arena, open into the area that AHS is using. So I don't know, somehow we can't lock them because of fire. So how do you prevent those doors from being used? Would signage be enough? Would we have to put just basically like a greeter there just to prevent people from using the doors while AHS is there or something like that?
Right.
But I mean, it's not insurmountable. There's solutions there.
Okay. And then the real challenge would be the field house and the swimming pool, because of their
the field house, yeah, because we would be putting all of AHS's stuff essentially onto the walking track. And then when AHS isn't there, there's a set of doors we can close. So all their equipment and all their gear and whatnot stays locked. So the field house and the walking track would not be accessible in any means.
until AHS is gone.
Correct.
Okay. Swimming pool.
Swimming pool, I think we're looking at, by the time we get it open, we're getting close to when AHS is leaving anyway.
Okay.
That one would be easier anyway, because it's on the back half of the building, as long as we're saying use the curling entrance. And again, maybe it's just cordoning off their area and a greeter or something like that to make sure someone doesn't cross.
Okay.
But I think that one's workable as well.
So, the hockey, figure skating, swim groups are all kind of asking for access first half of September, by the sounds of it. Is this doable? Can we?
That would be a stretch.
Can we instruct you to put a plan into place as to what it would look like? Chime in anytime you want, Chris, too. So I don't know. I'm just asking, like, how soon could these groups go in? And not only just opening that and getting these groups in here, but what are the rules when you come in? I know with the hockey guys that I've spoken to, like, they drop their kids off fully dressed and they go in the facility. Parents are not allowed in.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the bigger conversation is what does it look like for our increased cleaning? That's going to take we were actually just reviewing the budget for that facility this morning. And if you're looking at opening with partial usage, from a cost perspective, we're running basically full costs on the building, but only getting half the utilization or half the fees back or something like that. So it's going to be very expensive to run the facility in that kind of scenario, because now we're getting less users through, we're getting less bookings, less rentals. We're going to do increased cleaning. We'll probably have most of our staff back on board at that point in time. The field house is still going to be shut down. We're going to probably have to, like I said, if AHS is in there, there's some sort of greeter or security to keep limits enforced. But we can build all that into the plan. That's not a problem.
Welcome to operating any business during COVID.
Yeah, I guess we're a little bit behind. We've been closed the whole time. We're behind the curve on that one. So yeah, you would probably know better than we do, Craig. But that is, we can build it all into the plan. We've already given some consideration to that, of what it might look like. And then I would suggest probably October 1st is probably a more achievable date. It gives us a bit of time to get our plans, get staffing levels back into place, get recalls done, and get up to speed.
And that's the thing because I know the user groups are probably watching this right now. It's not as easy as just crack the doors open and away you go. It's not that easy. These are not all standalone little facilities like, you know, the Okotoks, the one Okotok Centennial rink and stuff. It's just a rink, right? It's pretty simple. We've got a lot going on in that facility, and it gets complicated with this stuff. So, and staffing and everything else have been laid off and getting them back and going, blah, blah, blah. So it's not a unlock the door and away you go scenario. So I got to get these questions going here. Councillor Kinghorn, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. When I go by there, I don't see that facility in full operation by AHS. It looks like they're on restricted hours of some sort. Is that correct, Riley? And if that's the case, could we sort of work with that a little bit? Because I don't believe they're there late afternoon, which is, of course, when the hockey players want to get into the hockey rink. Is there some options with that consideration in place?
We did actually talk about that, and that's probably the easiest scenario is so they're not there on weekends, we could do weekends. They're not there on evenings, we could do weekend or evenings. And that really simplifies that opening. If we wanted more hours, then we're getting into how do we define those limits and whatnot. I'm not sure of their hours right now, but I know they are doing 5 days a week. So I know they did a couple weeks ago, they changed up and increased their hours because they were seeing higher testing numbers, but that fluctuates week to week anyway as well. But
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Riley, just a question, and I don't know how much space inside the facility AHS is using, and I know it also presents some challenges with our other tenant up there, but could the programming space on the south side of the building be utilized for testing?
AHS has said the way that front entry is set up works very well from them with the automatic doors from a vehicle access perspective. And so they're very hesitant to move from that. Our original inquiry was, well, could you move to the west side of the field house and use the overhead doors? Because we have a big overhead door there. And their preference was that to stay because of the way that the configuration is there.
So even beyond when it gets too cold, that's the area they prefer to be in.
Well, when it gets too cold, they'll pull out.
They'll pull completely out.
That was the indication to me, is that once it's too cold, they don't want their nurses outside in the freezing weather. And I'm not quite sure why, if it was for the nurses or because of the samples, which way it was going. But either way, they didn't want to be operating in sub-zero temperatures. So that's when they'll pull out.
Okay, fair enough. I was just wondering if we could provide them the space to continue doing it there if that was possible. So thanks, Riley.
No problem.
Okay. Now what?
We could bring, well, I guess I was going to say we could bring back a plan September 10th, but if we're opening October 1st, we probably need an approval of a plan prior to that. September 10th wouldn't be, we'd need more time.
Seems like a long time to me. Can we shorten the timeline up? Chris, jump in anytime. Help Riley out.
Craig, Chris has had to step away.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, that's why he's not helping me out.
Yeah. Council could also call a special meeting if that's what they'd like you to shorten up that time frame.
That might be a better suggestion, Kara, because I mean, if we could turn around a plan here in a week or two, most of the time is implementing the plan.
Yeah,
I think we could get pull a plan pretty quick, but it's the recruitment and putting all the measures in place that does concern me. I know we've lost, even when we go and try and recall staff, we're going to find out, especially on the pool side, a lot of them have found better opportunities or different opportunities in the meantime. So because we're one of the last to open. So I am a little concerned around what that might look like and how do we get there. So
Okay, well, maybe Riley, maybe what we'll do is maybe in a week's time, if we can get an update from you as to kind of where you're at, and from you and Chris, kind of where
Okay.
you're at, what this might look. We don't need all the answers and everything dealt with, but
I guess from my perspective is, because we've been kind of holding station on this, is that council wants to open the facility as soon as we can, or partial opening as soon as we can. And
in
if
the area,
that's kind of what we want to do, we will work to that.
in the areas that are safe, in the areas we can have control, and in the areas that do not impede Alberta Health Services, because Alberta Health Services is still priority. But that being said, just it's priority, but they're willing to work with us, we can work with them, and we can work with these user groups and find a solution. Win,
So-
win.
I got 3 things to do here. Do not impede AHS, open what we can as soon as we can, and an update to council on that plan in about a week.
Thank you. Well done. Thanks, Riley. Thanks, Chris. Chucking Riley under the bus. Fantastic. He just said, I'm out of here. We're good on the Cal meeting. Any questions,
No.
answers?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, we are not. Oh, this is gonna get me still. Thanks, Carol.
Riley, did Alberta Health Services say why? Like, I know about the 2 colds. I find a little bit illogical. I guess what I'm trying to say is, did they happen to mention that hypothetically, if there was an outbreak or something that happens in October, would they continue on, or would they still just say they need an indoor site? Or
I didn't clarify that, to be honest with them. I'm looking for my notes, but they were pretty, they did say they weren't looking for a winter test site. They did say that.
I wonder why, just out of curiosity. And I know you don't have the answer, but I just am putting it out there.
Question. Councillor Cooey?
Thanks. Riley, just a quick question. Wonder if it might be beneficial, because I know the curling club doesn't typically start until often either the week before or week after Thanksgiving. So wondering if doing a staggered start might help, where we, don't open the back half of the building for a little while, and maybe it's harder to do it that way, but just an option for you to consider. Maybe we do the staggered and open the big arena and the pool, and then work on the back a couple weeks later.
It actually might be easier the other way around, to open curling first and then work forwards, because they'll have no interactions with AHS, and it allows us to structure that a little bit better. And I know the ice plants will be ready to go by middle of September. We can have ice in roughly around that time. So it might be actually easier to work the other way.
Councillor Masterman?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Sorry, it just kind of dawned on me as we're talking about all this that I guess I'm wondering if AHS. I mean, I know they have rules in place as far as how all these various activities happen, and responsibly with COVID, but I guess I'm just throwing a little caution out there that if is High River, are we ready to do all these activities responsibly with COVID? And I know that's up to the organizations, and I've read the letters from hockey and everything, and it certainly sounds like that they want to, but I guess I just want to make sure that that everybody is prepared to do that it's not going to be like last season. It's a new season and it's a new year, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that from parents to participants to the organizers that it's going to be different this year, and they've got to take all the precautions. So I just kind of want to throw that out there as we're talking about trying to open the facility sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree, Bruce. This isn't normal. We're still in the middle of a pandemic here, and that needs to be noted. And I think that's where some of these other facilities, what I've been reading is that, you know, let's take hockey, for example. The players show up dressed, they put their skates and their helmet on, and then they're on the ice. They're not hanging out in dressing rooms and everything else. Parents are not allowed in right now. And when they do, when listening to one of the programs on the radio last week, when they are allowed in, it's going to be mandatory masks in these facilities, right? And some people won't like that, but as the one guy on the radio said, man, if that's all I have to do to be able to go watch my son play hockey, I'll put the damn mask on, right? Big deal. Let's just, we can do things and be safe. I'm 100% with that. But at the same time, I think our plan needs to, you know, we need to have AHS have a look at it and make sure that there's nothing that we're missing when we do these things. So we still got to be careful. It's not a free for all. Good. Any questions outside of anything on the agenda before we end this meeting? No hands? Good. Meeting adjourned, 1:42. Thank you very much.